My husband had a secret life for 10 years and I never knew. Opening scene, the perfect life or not. I always thought my life was perfect. I had a loving husband, a beautiful home, and a career I was proud of. For 10 years, Daniel and I built a life together that seemed like a dream come true. He was charming, devoted, and always made me feel like the most special woman in the world. But was it all a lie? It started with a simple phone call, one that changed everything. "Hello, is this Mrs. Carter?" A woman's voice, cold, calm, almost knowing. "Yes," I answered, my stomach tightening. "You need to know the truth about your husband." My heart stopped. "He's not who you think he is." And just like that, my perfect world shattered. The message that started it all. That night, Daniel came home as if nothing had happened. He kissed me on the forehead, smiled, and asked, "How was your day, babe?" I stared at him, my heart pounding. How could he be so normal when a stranger just told me he had secrets? I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to believe it was just a prank. But then I got the message. Unknown number. If you don't believe me, check his second phone, the one he hides in his car. Wait, what? Daniel didn't have a second phone. At least I thought he didn't. But that night, when he was asleep, I grabbed his car keys and ran outside. I searched frantically through his glove compartment, under the seats, in the trunk. And then, tucked away inside a hidden compartment under the driver's seat, I found it. A black phone. Locked. No fingerprint, just a passcode. My hands trembled. Who was my husband, really? The secret unveiled. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind raced with 1,000 questions. The next morning, while Daniel was in the shower, I tried every combination I could think of to unlock the phone. His birthday, our wedding date, even the day we first met. Nothing worked. Then I remembered something. A few months ago, I caught Daniel staring at an old photo on his laptop, a picture of a woman I didn't recognize. At the time, he brushed it off, said she was just an old friend. But something about that photo bothered me. I typed in the date from the corner of the photo. The phone unlocked. And what I saw inside destroyed me. There were hundreds of messages. Photos of a woman with a little girl. And then one message stood out. "Daniel, I promise, baby, I'll leave my wife soon. Just give me a little more time." My hands went cold. Daniel, my husband, had a second family. For 10 years. The confrontation. That night, I sat at the dining table, waiting. The phone right in front of me. When Daniel walked in, he smiled. "Hey, babe." I slid the phone across the table. His face went pale. "Where did you get this?" His voice was barely above a whisper. I folded my arms. "Oh, I don't know, Daniel. Maybe from the car you thought I'd never search?" Silence. Then he did something I never expected. He laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not a guilty laugh. A cold, knowing laugh. "So you finally found out?" I froze. Not a single apology, no attempt to lie or cover it up. Just acceptance. That was the moment I realized he never loved me. I was just his backup plan. The betrayal runs deeper than I thought. The cold truth. My heart pounded in my chest. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Daniel didn't look guilty. He didn't look remorseful. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and smirked. I knew this day would come. I just thought it would take you longer to figure it out. I gritted my teeth. "How long, Daniel?" He raised an eyebrow. "How long have you been lying to me? How long have you been playing this little game?" He shrugged. 10 years. I felt my stomach drop. 10 years. Every vacation, every anniversary, every "I love you." It was all a lie. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "And you were never going to tell me?" Daniel chuckled. "Why would I? You were happy, weren't you?" "Who is she?" I stared at the phone, my fingers trembling. The woman in the pictures, she looked younger than me, prettier, more vulnerable. And the little girl beside her, my chest tightened. "Who is she?" I whispered. Daniel sighed as if this conversation bored him. "Her name is Claire. And the little girl, that's my daughter, Ava." My blood ran cold. "Your daughter?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Daniel nodded. "She's 6. Beautiful kid. Smart like her mother." I felt like I was going to be sick. 6 years old. That meant he cheated on me while we were married. The second betrayal. I stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. "You had a child with another woman and you never told me?" Daniel rolled his eyes. "Oh, come on. Don't act so shocked. Marriages fall apart all the time. I just got ahead of it before ours did." My nails dug into my palms. "You didn't get ahead of it, Daniel. You lied to me. For 10 years, you made me believe we had a life together. Daniel scoffed. We did have a life together, and it was good, but Claire's different. I felt my entire body shake with rage. Different how? He smirked. She doesn't ask questions, she doesn't push me, she just loves me. I swallowed the burning anger rising in my throat. And what am I, Daniel? I asked through gritted teeth. He leaned forward, his expression darkening. You're my safety net. My vision blurred. Safety net? That was all I had been to him. Not a wife, not a partner. Just a backup plan. The revenge plan forms. I exhaled shakily, forcing myself to stay calm. I wasn't going to break. Not in front of him. Daniel thought he had won. He thought I would cry, scream, beg, but he had no idea who he was dealing with. I slowly sat back down, folding my hands on the table. All right, I said smoothly. Daniel raised an eyebrow. All right? I nodded. You want to be with Claire? Fine. You want to be a father to Ava? Fine. But let's talk about what happens next. Daniel scoffed. What do you mean? I smiled, but there was no warmth behind it. We're getting a divorce. Daniel chuckled. That's it? I thought you'd put up more of a fight. I shrugged. No point, you made your choice. Now, let's make sure we do this the right way. He smirked, clearly thinking he had won. But he didn't know what was coming next. The trap is set. The next few weeks, I played the role of the obedient wife. I smiled, I cooked dinner, I even kissed Daniel goodnight. And while he was out, I did my own digging. I hired a private investigator. I found bank statements, hidden properties, and another name attached to one of his accounts. Claire didn't even know he was married, and she wasn't the only woman in his life. Daniel had 3 separate affairs over the past 10 years, and that was all I needed. Because if Daniel thought I was just going to walk away quietly, he had another thing coming. The perfect payback. The game begins. For weeks, I played the perfect wife. I smiled at Daniel, acted like I was heartbroken but accepting of our fate. I made him believe I was weak. That was his first mistake. Because while he was out living his double life, I was building my case. And when I was ready, I set the trap. The paperwork that changed everything. One evening, I sat across from Daniel at the dinner table. I poured him a glass of wine, my hands steady. Hey babe, I said sweetly. I have something for you. Daniel, still believing he had won, smirked. Oh yeah? What is it? I slid a stack of papers across the table. He frowned, picking them up. His eyes scanned the first few lines, and his face went pale. Because what he was holding wasn't just a divorce agreement. It was a full financial breakdown of everything he had tried to hide. Every secret account, every lie. And the best part? I had already taken action. The ultimate betrayal. I leaned forward, my voice dangerously soft. You see, Daniel, I wasn't just going to let you walk away. His hands trembled as he flipped through the pages. How did you... I smirked. Let's just say, you were never as careful as you thought. He clenched his jaw. You have no right to this money. I laughed. Oh, but I do, because legally, half of everything you own is mine. Daniel's eyes darkened. You think you can take everything from me? I tilted my head. Oh, sweetheart, I already did. Because while he was busy cheating and lying, I had transferred assets, frozen his accounts, and contacted Claire. And the best part? Claire was about to learn the truth. The public exposure. The next morning, Daniel received a call from Claire. At first, he ignored it. Then, another call and another. He finally picked up, his face tight with irritation. Claire, baby, what's wrong? Her voice was shaking. You lied to me. Daniel's expression froze. You're married, Daniel. You have been for 10 years. He stammered. Claire, I can explain. No, no more lies. Her voice cracked. You promised me we were going to have a life together. Daniel rubbed his temples. Baby, please, listen to me. But then, he heard another voice. Hey, Daniel. It was me. The breakdown. Daniel whipped around, eyes wide. You, he hissed. I smiled, holding up my phone. Say hi to Claire. She's been listening this whole time. His face turned red with rage. Do you know what you've done? He growled. I crossed my arms. Yeah, I took everything from you, just like you took everything from me. And then the final blow. You should probably check your accounts. Daniel grabbed his phone, his fingers moving frantically. Then his face fell. His accounts frozen. His hidden assets gone. His reputation destroyed. And Claire? She left him too. The final goodbye. Daniel slumped into his chair, staring at me in disbelief. You ruined me, he whispered. I smiled. No, Daniel, you ruined yourself. I grabbed my bag, walking toward the door, but before I left, I turned back one last time. "Oh, and by the way," I smirked, "you might want to find a good lawyer, because I'm taking you to court." And with that, I walked away. For the first time in 10 years, I was finally free, starting over, and the final twist. Freedom at last? For the first time in 10 years, I woke up without fear. No more secrets, no more lies, no more Daniel. I had taken everything from him, his money, his reputation, his mistress, and now I was finally free. Or so I thought, because Daniel wasn't finished yet. The unexpected visit. A week after our final confrontation, I was sitting in a cafe, sipping my morning coffee, when my phone buzzed. "Unknown number, meet me, now, 45th Street, downtown, you owe me that much." I stared at the message. I knew exactly who it was. And against all logic, I went, face to face one last time. Daniel was waiting outside an abandoned building. He looked different. Not the arrogant, smug man I had once loved. He looked destroyed. I crossed my arms. "What do you want?" He exhaled shakily. "I lost everything." I tilted my head. "And whose fault is that?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket. For a split second, my blood ran cold. Was he armed? But then he pulled out a letter. "The final truth, Su That Kui Kung." "Read it," he muttered, handing it to me. I hesitated, but curiosity got the best of me. The letter was old, yellowed at the edges. I unfolded it, my hands shaking slightly. And as I read the first few lines, my heart stopped. The secret behind everything. Daniel had been lying to me for years, but there was one thing he never told me. This wasn't just about him having a secret life. It was so much bigger than that, because Claire wasn't just his mistress. She was his first wife, and I was the other woman. The real betrayal. I felt my knees weaken as I kept reading. Daniel had married Claire first. He had built a life with her long before he met me. And then when she got pregnant, he got scared. So he did what he always did. He ran straight into my arms. He married me, pretending to be a devoted husband while still keeping Claire in his life. And when he realized he couldn't juggle both women forever, he chose me, not out of love, but because I was his safety net. I wasn't the victim of betrayal. I was part of it. The final decision. I felt sick. I had spent months hating Claire, thinking she was the woman who had stolen my husband, when in reality, I was the other woman all along. Daniel looked at me, his expression unreadable. "You wanted revenge," he said quietly. "You got it." I swallowed hard. "Why are you telling me this now?" He gave a hollow laugh. "Because it's over, for both of us." And for the first time, I saw the truth in his eyes. Daniel wasn't just a liar. He was lost, and I refused to let him drag me down with him. Moving on. I walked away without another word. I didn't need closure. I didn't need an apology. Because in the end, I won. I took back my life, my power, my future. And as I stepped into the sunlight, I finally let go of the past. Because Daniel, he would always be trapped in his own lies. But me? I was finally free. The courtroom battle. The court summons. It had been 3 months since I last saw Daniel. I had moved on, or at least I was trying to. But just when I thought I was finally free, I received a letter in the mail. A court summons. Daniel was fighting the divorce. Not just that, he was suing me. For half of everything I owned. The war begins. I walked into the courtroom, my lawyer beside me. Daniel was already there, dressed in an expensive suit, looking like nothing had changed. But his eyes told a different story. He looked desperate, because he had nothing left. The lies in court. The trial was brutal. Daniel's lawyer painted me as a manipulative gold digger, a woman who schemed to take his fortune. He was a loving husband, the lawyer argued, and she destroyed him. I almost laughed out loud. But then, Daniel stood up, and he did something I never expected. His last trick. "I want to make a statement," Daniel said. The judge nodded. "Go ahead." He turned to me, and suddenly his eyes filled with tears. "I loved you," he whispered. I froze. Was this another game? "I know I made mistakes," he continued, "but I never meant to hurt you. Everything I did was out of fear of losing you." I clenched my fists. This wasn't real, but the jury was eating it up. My last move, I stood up. "May I respond, Your Honor?" I asked. The judge nodded. I took a deep breath, and I turned to Claire. Yes, she was there, sitting at the back of the courtroom. watching everything unfold. The truth exposed. Daniel, I said, my voice steady, if you truly loved me, tell the court, how many women have you said those words to? The room went silent. Daniel swallowed. I held up a stack of documents. Bank statements, love letters, emails, photos, proof that while you were loving me, you were also loving at least 3 other women. A murmur swept through the courtroom. Daniel's face turned pale, but I wasn't done. I turned to Claire. You want to know the real Daniel? I asked her. Her eyes filled with tears, because she already knew. She just didn't want to believe it. The final verdict. The judge's decision. The courtroom was silent. All eyes were on Daniel. He had nowhere to run. No more lies to tell. No more women to manipulate. The judge cleared his throat. Mr. Carter, he said sternly, the evidence presented in this court paints a clear picture of deception, infidelity, and financial misconduct. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his seat. You not only lied to your wife, but also attempted to defraud her. Therefore, the court rules in favor of Mrs. Carter. The final words came like a thunderclap. She will receive full financial compensation, including spousal support, and you will retain none of the marital assets. The courtroom exploded in gasps. Daniel's face drained of color. He had just lost everything. His last plea. As the courtroom emptied, I gathered my documents, my hands steady for the first time in months. And then I heard his voice. Wait. I turned. Daniel stood there, looking at me like a broken man. I have nothing left, he whispered. I folded my arms. And whose fault is that? He ran a hand through his hair. Can we talk? I laughed. Not a soft laugh. A cold, knowing laugh. Talk? I echoed. Like how you talked to me for 10 years while living a double life? His jaw clenched. I made mistakes, okay? But you don't have to... I held up a hand. I don't have to do anything, Daniel. I stepped closer, my voice dangerously soft. You played the game. I smiled. And you lost. And with that, I walked away. For the last time, 1 year later, life had changed. Radically. I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. The divorce settlement had given me a new start, a new life. I moved to a new city, got a new job, found new happiness. And then one day, as I was walking through the park, I saw Claire, sitting on a bench, alone. I hesitated. Then I walked over. She looked up, eyes widening. I wasn't sure you'd ever talk to me, she admitted. I sat down beside her. Silence. Then, I used to think you ruined my life, she whispered. I exhaled. I used to think the same about you. Another pause. And then, for the first time, we smiled. 'Cause the truth was, neither of us won. The only person who had lost was Daniel. The final twist. As I got up to leave, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. You think it's over? You think you've won? Watch your back. I froze. I turned my head, scanning the park. Nothing. But in the distance, a black car sat parked across the street. Was it him? Or was it someone worse?